we're going to talk about one of the baby saints of the church. He's only been a saint for 3 weeks. Well, I should say he's only been a canonized saint for 3 weeks, because, saints have to be saints in their lifetime before they're canonized saints. However, okay, so I'm going to make a series here, and so we're talking about Paul VI. He was one of the several saints who was canonized in October, and I learned about him really the past few years, because he's not, I guess not super popular, but I fell in love with him in a really Catholic nerdy way. I guess I fell in love with him and just who he was and how he treated the human person, and his courage, and just how he reacted as Pope, as the first Pope of the post Vatican II. We're gonna talk about a little more in when I get into his life and the PowerPoint and everything. But I'm gonna read you. I forget where I found this, but I'm gonna read you a quote on how he reacted to the whole post Vatican II thing, because it sums it up really, really well. It says he approached this task of implementing Vatican II policies with a sense of the difficulty involved in making changes in centuries-old structures and practices, changes rendered necessary by many rapid transformations in the social, psychological, and political millennium of the 20th century. Paul VI's approach was consistently one of careful assessment of each concrete situation, with a sharp awareness of many varied complications that he believed could not be ignored. And that kind of gives you a sense of who he was as a person and how he really looked at the world. And now we're going to get more into his life. You can see I did the misunderstood Pope here, and then you can just compare it to the thumbnail that says the Pope for our times, and just, I don't know, contemplate why I chose those. I didn't make them up, other people did. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on his early life, but real quick. So he was born in 1897, and the cool thing is he was baptized 4 days later, and on September 30th, and it's literally the same day St. Therese died. Like, it's not just she died September 30th, 1897. And she said I think she said something like, I will visit the cradles of newly baptized babies. Very cute. So his birth name was Giovanni Battista Montini. That's the shortened version. My parish priest can say the entire thing, and it's ridiculously long. He was born into a middle-class Italian family. His dad was a lawyer, I believe, and then he was homeschooled for a lot of when he was younger. Like, when he was younger, he was homeschooled. I think he went to school when he got to high school. But shout out to homeschoolers. Okay, so moving on, he was ordained a priest in 1920. So I don't know what's the math? How old was he? 23. Wow. That is. Did I do the math right? Yeah. Wow, he was young. So he was ordained in 1920, and then pretty much he worked as a Vatican diplomat and Secretary of State and other things in the Vatican for the next 30 years, over 30 years, and then until 1954, when he was made the Archbishop of Milan. Milan, darling, Milan. Okay, I don't know if anybody's gonna get that reference. And so he was made the Archbishop of Milan, and the reason I put Archbishop of Workers right here is because he loves to go visit all the factory workers and everything, because Milan's one of the biggest dioceses in the world, and so it covers a lot of ground, and the whole Industrial Revolution, that is earlier in history, obviously, but there are all these factories going on in Italy, and he loved to go visit them, the workers. And then, this is going back to before he was Archbishop. I should have switched them. But during World War II, he was one of the key players in helping Pius XII hide Jews in the Vatican. He was close friends with Pius XII in general, and he helped him hide Jews from the Vatican, and supported him through it because it was kind of crazy. Okay, so then we move into his papacy. So after 9 years of being Archbishop of Milan, he was elected Pope after John the 23rd. So this is the middle of Vatican II, 1963. So he closed Vatican II. John the 23rd opened it, he closed it. So he was the first post-conciliar pope, and it was really, he had to implement so many changes, and he had to look at all these crazy things. But he got a lot of backlash from it, but he did a fantastic job in trying to handle it, even if it didn't go out, even if the results weren't the greatest. They weren't all his fault. But here are his encyclicals. I'm sure you will recognize this one. That should be italicized. You recognize this one. We're celebrating 50 years right now of Humanae Vitae, and look at the date and look at the topic. It was very controversial and caused a lot of uproar, to say the least. Okay, so we're gonna do a bunch of all his firsts. He's the first pope of several things. He was the first to speak in the United Nations, so that was in New York City, and he said during that speech, "I am only here as an expert on humanity." That is a bold claim, but if you think about how the Catholic Church is just trying, the Catholic Church is not, things aren't true because the Catholic Church says they are. The Catholic Church promotes the truth, and one of the, like, they understand the human person, and so he's the Pope, and so he kind of understands the human person a little bit, only a little bit. I'm being sarcastic, if you can't tell. And then he was the first one to travel by airplane, and here's all the places he visited. So there's the Holy Land, India, North America, Fatima, Africa, and then all of these places in Asia and Australia and all that fun jazz. I think that was all one trip. That was a super long trip. And then he quipped, "Wait till you see how many trips my successor takes." And his successor was John Paul I, but he only lasted in his papacy in 1 month. So John Paul II was his second one, the one right after John Paul I, and you all know how much he traveled. And on this very long trip to Asia, he got stabbed twice and barely made it out with his life. I think he bled a lot, clearly, because he got stabbed. Just another parallel to JP too. And here are his themes, the themes of his papacy: world peace, social justice, world hunger, literacy, brotherhood under God, and international cooperation. There we go. Here's him speaking to Lyndon B. Johnson, one of our presidents. And then here's the picture of him at the United Nations on St. Francis's feast day. Okay, here are some of my favorite quotes. He has really good quotes, so look up his quotes. But here are some of my favorites. He didn't mince words. He was frank. Somebody should tell us right at the start of our lives that we are dying, that we might live life to the limit every minute, every day. Do it, I say. Whatever you want to do, do it now. There are only so many tomorrows. All life demands struggle. Those who have everything given to them become lazy, selfish, and insensitive to the real values of life. The very striving and hard work that we can so constantly try to avoid is the major building block in the person we are today. I think America needs to hear this whole quote because we fail at that. Even though we're so, like, oh my gosh, individualist, hard work, rugged individualism, all that, we are very lazy and selfish and self-centered. And we just like things given to us. We have lost a lot of the core American values. And here's a more uplifting quote. It is indeed in the midst of their distress that our fellow men need to know joy to hear its song. What was I going to say? Yeah, this is kind of about going out and, oh my gosh, last night when I was at work, one of my coworkers said, I want to go home because it was crazy last night. It was Friday night, so of course it's crazy. And I said, yeah, I want to go home too because I was tired. I was tired. I'd been at school all day. And then he said, yeah, I want to go home and take a nap and never wake up. And I said, that's death. And he said, yeah, I know it's death. I just wanted to call it by a different name. The reason I tell this not depressing, I don't want to say that in the, just whatever way, because it just shows what state humanity is in right now in our day and age. And that's kind of, we need to bring joy to others, and I don't know. We need to know people that meaning in life exists. Okay, so here's a quote from Pope Francis' homily at Paul VI's canonization. Here are all the banners. I really like this picture. It's all the banners of the saints who are canonized at that mass a few weeks ago. And so here's Paul VI. He's right in the middle, probably because he's Pope. Okay, so here's an excerpt from the homily. Like St. Paul, Paul VI spent his life for Christ's gospel, crossing new boundaries and becoming its witness in proclamation and in dialogue, a prophet of a church turned outwards, looking to those far away and taking care of the poor. Even in the midst of tiredness and misunderstanding, Pope Paul VI bore witness in a passionate way to the beauty and the joy of following Christ totally. Today he still urges us, together with the Council, whose wise helmsman he was, to live our common vocation, the universal call to holiness, not to half measures, but to holiness. Paul VI, pray for us. And Oscar Romero was also canonized at that mass. That's why I put him here, and that's him. That's why I chose this picture. I'm just going to focus on one of his virtues that really stuck out to me, and that is his courage, his fortitude. You can probably guess that being the first pope after Vatican II was probably really tough if you look at just the past 60 years. And so you can see how that was very difficult for him, and especially just all the decisions that he had to make. If you think about this was happening in the 60s, just think about the cultural revolution that was going on at that time. It took a lot of guts to say what he said and to take the stance, and you combine that with his kind of quiet demeanor that he had, and people just didn't really take it very well. But he stood up for what was right. He was careful, and he worded it so that it wasn't gonna offset people, but he also didn't mince words. He spoke the truth even when nobody wanted to hear it. And that's one of the reasons why he's such a pope and a saint for our times, is because we need to be able to learn how to do that. We need to learn how to say, okay, I'm going to stick up for what's right no matter what. And I know it's hard. I struggle with it. But seriously, we just got to learn how to do it. But still, get only never do it.
Pauli arc nostra, matura deliberazione preavita e divina ope sepius implorata, ac deplorimorum fratrum nostrorum consilio, beatus Paulum VI, Asgarium Arnolfum Romero Adames, Franciscum Spinelli, Vincentium Romano, Mariam Catharinam Casper, Nazarian Ignatian a Santa Teresia a Jesús Marchmesan, et Nuncium Sulpicio, Santos esse decernimus et definimus, ac Santorum catalogo ascribimus, statuentis eos in universa Ecclesia, inter santos pia devocioni recoli debere, in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Amen.
And the response is a Jubilate Deo. With this canonization formula, the Pope has officially declared the new saints.